Hi, my name is Ron Layman. I'm from the Faux School in Frederick, Maryland, where I teach decorative painting workshops and complete commission projects for clients all around the world. Today, I am going to show you this fun, really organic texture effect with violet and pearlescent highlights using Travertino and Galaxy Wax. So let's get our tools, let's get our materials, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I've done to get ready for today's technique is I base coated the surface using the quartz primer. Quartz primer is a base coat or a primer for the Bernini line plasters, all of them. One primer for everything. However, it's not a primer to seal raw surfaces. So if you have bare drywall, you need to seal that with a PVA primer. If you're going over wood, you got to use something else. Ask your local paint store representative what you should use. Seal the surface first, put the base coat down, and then you're ready to go on. In this case, I rolled this with a 3/8" nap roller. Now, the material for today is going to be the Romano Travertino. It is a dry mix, and we're going to mix it to black. So let's show you how to do that. Romano Travertino, we're going to tint it. So we have a cup here. Let's see how we can do this. We're going to put some in this cup. We're going to pour that in here. Let's get some more. It's a big board. All right. All right. Now we're going to throw some pigment in it. I'm using my carbon black. Because I want this jet black. And then distilled water. Because we know what we're getting with distilled water. All right. Then we're going to take our big drill and mix this up. Now, when you do this, you want to add a little bit of water at a time, not adding too much. Because if you add too much, it's going to get real soupy on you and you're going to have a mess. So part of it is you get to control the thickness you're looking for. So if you want it real thick and stiff, less water. You want it a little thinner, more water. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Okay. I'm pretty happy with my color. I want jet black. Typically, I would weigh this out, make sure I got the right increments to recreate it properly later. For this sample, I'm just going with the jet black. No big deal. Now, what I'm going to do is mix this up for a solid 10 to 15 minutes because I'm going to break all this up and get it nice and creamy and no clumps, no lumps when I put it on the wall. I don't want to see particulates explode and get little pockets of white unmixed material. So I'll be back in just a little bit. All right, so we've got our plaster. We're ready to go. Look how dark it is. All right, the tool for this is actually going to be something different today. We're going to be using a whiz roller, all right? Good old-fashioned whiz roller, the thickest one we can get. I pre-wet the roller, meaning rinsed it out really well because I wanted it to be loaded with moisture so I can get meaning when I dip this into that material first and start, it's going to look the same here as it does here. If you go with a dry roller, it's not going to get as much material out of the bucket. It's going to go on a little thin to begin with. Yes, we're rolling this. And it's going to be a little sloppy, all right? Let's put it in here and load it up. Let's get it on there. Different directions, okay? Don't roll it up and down. We don't want that. The biggest thing here is making sure your texture and your coverage. Coverage is consistent. Texture is consistent. And see, by going in these different patterns like this, crosshatch, we're not creating roller marks. And we use a short little motion. That way we get a consistent look in this. We try to go real long, we're going to get a different effect, and we don't want that. Okay. You're asking a big wall. Do I have to use such a small roller? Practice, get proficient with it. If you're going to use a big roller, just make sure you do it the same way. Don't look at just getting it done. It's got to be done correctly. This is a 2 foot by 4 foot board, which is the standard size for all the plaster classes now. Actually, most of the classes are using this size. So this should take, with this method, 2 quarts. We don't want to roll it too thin. We want that texture. I mean, it's okay to get heavy with it. Let's see, if you put too much on, what happens is it doesn't create this suction, meaning it doesn't get the texture. It just kind of rolls itself out. We want some texture on here from this. And you'll understand as we get closer to the end, when we start enhancing all of this. Yeah, it's a process. Take some time. Don't be in a rush. Uniform is key. You'll see it when we put the finish on it. Okay, almost there. Yeah, boy, it is time consuming, huh? Let's put a little music, chill out, and get to it. No, it's 100% coverage. Now I wanted you to decide. Now, if I'm going black over black, so if I would have tinted my primer black, that would, I mean, it would help. It's not that big of a deal. Actually, it is a big deal because when you're working over white, you can definitely see how you're covering it. If I'm working over black, it actually makes it a little harder to see my coverage. It's still wet. Now, if I see something I don't like, I can always come back and mist it and keep working. Okay. Just under 2 quarts. See, I can just go back. I want to make it a little heavier in some areas. Okay. All right, there we go. Now we need to let this set up to a point of firmness, and that's when we'll come back and I'll show you the next step. See you in a bit. Okay, now you can see all this different coloration happening. We have some area, like this is the thing. This will not dry uniformly. It will not dry evenly. It will not dry anywhere near at the same time. This is going to be all on its own, every which way. Thicker material takes longer to dry. Thinner material dries quicker. So you're going to have to play and get used to this. Go into the studio and just become proficient with it. Next step of the process. 824. Why am I using this one? Well, this is like I've said prior, I have different tools for different things. This tool is part of my tool kit for the textured plasters. Remember, Travertino's heavy, big aggregate inside of it. It's going to leave scratch marks on here. So you don't want to use this trowel in your good Venetian or your Grisello or your Marmorino Fino. All right. Now what we're going to do, start with a light pressure at about 25-degree angle and just slightly come over top of it and start knocking the high stuff down a little bit. Rag candy. And we're going to go in different directions. If we go all in the same direction, we're going to create like a linear or a pattern, and we don't want that. We want it to be different. Now there's a big flat spot right here. It's gonna be a little tricky. Hold on a second. So there's nothing wrong with this other than the fact that when we come back and do the decorative wax treatment, we're not gonna get as much interest here as we are over here because it was a lot of material, it was thicker, and now it's flat. What does that mean? We do the decorative wax finish, you're gonna see a flat or a dark spot because the wax is gonna ride over the surface. So there's nothing for it to get stuck into. So we can grab our little texture tool, come back here, and punch it up a little bit. And then as it firms up, gets into that state of love, we can now burnish it and get a shine out of it on the high spots. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off and I'll see you in a little bit. All right, she's dry. We're ready to move on to the next phase, which is adding some decor, dimension, and some depth to it. So for that, we're going to use Galaxy Wax. And we're going to start with violet. So when you get these and you open them up, sometimes you can see a hint of color in the container. Oh, that one's been on there. Meaning, when this stuff dries, it gets very, very hard. It's a protective top coat and decorative enhancement top coat. So can you see that? That's the violet. See it on the outer lip here? But you can't really tell on the inside. So it's a little hard to tell sometimes. So always make sure, well, they're marked to begin with, but if the labels come off, always mark them because you can't tell by looking at them what they are. Method of application, we're going to use a wet sponge, damp sponge, not wet. So we're going to use a natural sea sponge. Damp, wring it out because we don't want any water dripping down. I am wearing a glove because this Galaxy Wax, when it gets on or under your fingernails, it's a chore to get it out. I'm not interested in that fight tonight. All right. Violet. So we want the damp sponge because it's absorbing all of it. And always go in circles. That way, if you happen to make a mistake, it's an organic piece of the project. Or finish, and nobody's going to notice unless you point it out to them. And we don't want to do that. We're going to do 100% coverage. And see how it's getting stuck down in the crevices, the low areas. That's what we want. And you're just going to keep massaging it. Stand back. Make sure you're happy with the consistency. Like over here, it's a little softer. It's okay to be softer, but it has to transition in a nice natural way. We don't want to create like spots on a cow. The reason we use the wet sponge is for control. This plaster's thirsty and it will suck this material in
real quick if you're not careful. And when you use a dry sponge, one, the sponge has to get hydrated, and the only way to do that is by you pulling the moisture out of the galaxy wax. Therefore, you're going to use a lot more. So you pre-wet the sponge, and you don't have to use as much because it's not going to, you're not going to burn. Yeah, you're not going to use as much because it's already hydrated with water. And if I wasn't using a damn sponge, boy, there'd be hard lines everywhere. Meaning you would see, well, I don't want to jinx myself, but yeah, you would see these lines. Okay. You always wait 24 hours before you put the sealer on. The reason is you want to make sure that the plaster is completely dry, no matter what type of top coat you're using. If you get in there too soon and put the sealer or decorative on, which this is just a decorative top coat, it's a acrylic based material, but it's designed to work with, it's a breathable acrylic, so it will work with your lime plasters. So if you don't want to use wax because you're worried about down the road somebody redoing something, or how do we redecorate this if it's a commercial space or something along those lines, wax can be difficult to get off. This you can paint right over top of it. Or I should say primer right over top of it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this and I'll be back in just a little bit. All right, that phase is finished. So now we're gonna make sure we put the lid back on tight for the pearl. I'm sorry, violet, and we're gonna break out sponge, water. So now here's the difference. We've already put one coat over the whole top, so now the plaster's sealed up pretty well, meaning we'll use less material when we go over because there's not as much raw plaster for the new pearlescent color to bite into. So we have to be cautious, meaning this is basically going to glide across the surface and we're not going to get as much punch. So you just have to take your time. Ooh, we need more water. I was 1,000% incorrect on that one. So the good thing was it didn't bite into it, meaning it really didn't get on there and soak in, because that was really intense, whatever I put on there. Not whatever, the pearl. Super intense. So good to learn, but see what? See what? See, you just don't have to panic if something goes wrong. I mean, that would have been so strong. I'd be like, oh my God. So now water is gonna just help us move it around. Yeah, that looks like a giant sheet of pearlescent metal. Note about sponges. The best sponges come from Greece. They take longer to grow, so um, they're more durable. The ones coming out of Florida grow much quicker and they deteriorate much faster. So you can really play with it, and you've got time. Don't freak out. Don't rush. And you saw what could have been a disaster up there. And this is simply an idea that I had in my head. I've known the texture for a while. We used to do it with a clay-based product. But I don't have access to that at the moment. So same technique. And I kind of played around with colors, but I'm like, this will be fun, like a home theater accent wall behind the concession area, or where their back wall of the theater, where everybody, behind where everybody sits, with the right lighting on it. Really dramatic. Let's stand back and take a look.
Super cool.
Yeah, how's that look there? Can you see it? We'll do some close-ups on this one. All right, we're gonna let it do its thing. Be back in just a little bit. All right, there you go. We're finished, and this is how she turned out. So we've got black Travertino with violet and pearl highlights over the surface to give it that fun look. All right, there you go. My name is Ron Layman. I'm from the Faux School in Frederick, Maryland, where I teach decorative painting workshops and complete commission projects for clients all around the world. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.